Welcome back to the Horse Racing Show. Thank you for watching us on YouTube, listening to us on iPlay, Google Play, all those things. We're glad that you're with us. Really happy to have this guy with us. He's been a friend. He is my boss. If there's a high-profile sporting event on NBC, there's a great chance that Rob Hyland's going to be involved. A multiple Emmy Award winner. He covers the track and field events at the Olympics, figure skating at the Olympics, the high-profile ones of all the Olympic sports, those two, I think. And, of course, the producer of the Triple Crown, and he joins me now. Hello, Rob.
Hello, Kenny. Great to be on.
Yeah, thank you, man. And I just want to ask you about the Triple Crown this year. You're as well prepared as anybody in the history of TV, I believe, getting us all ready to do these events. But what's happened at the Derby and then what happened again at the Preakness with the runaway horse and John Velasquez, in addition to War of Will coming back and winning, it's certainly been a different kind of Triple Crown for us, hasn't it?
It sure has, Kenny. You know, we begin meeting each spring in late February to go through the plan for the upcoming Triple Crown, and you kind of plan for every scenario, and you never expect to go through the first two of these things and experience what we've experienced so far. So I was just out at Belmont earlier today, and I was meeting with the folks out there, and we're just hoping for a clean, safe race, incident-free and drama-free.
Yeah. And, you know, it's interesting, though, isn't it? It seems like the drama and controversy has drawn some viewers that may not have stayed around to watch a lot of the racing. People like this controversy.
You know, it's amazing, Kenny. The rating minute by minute of the Kentucky Derby this year actually went up after the race ended. So I think that's a testament to what you're saying. You know, people, by word of mouth, by social media, wanted to tune in after the fact to just watch the drama unfold, and it was pretty incredible.
Well, Rob, we had Mark Cassidy on. He was laughing because he has a great friendship with John Velasquez, but he was laughing that now that, thank God, Velasquez is okay, that he stole a little bit of his thunder because all the tweets and all the social media stuff about Bodie Express running free got a lot of attention, as well as War of Will winning the Preakness.
You know, it's amazing. I was talking to Mike Tirico last night at the Sports Emmy Awards, and John Velasquez was on CNN yesterday morning, and I'm pretty sure John was not on CNN the morning after he won the Kentucky Derby either time, and it's just amazing the traction that incident got. And I know, talking to friends that night on my way back to New York City, more people were watching Bodie Express during the Preakness than the race up front, and I'm glad the horse was, safely returned to the barn and everyone got home safely. But it was a crazy situation.
As far as when you go in, we're talking with Rob Hyland, who is the multiple Emmy Award winner for NBC Sports, and he's my boss, so I better do this good, huh? No pressure on me, right?
Come on, Kenny. We're teammates. There's no boss here.
Anyway, Rob also does Sunday Night Football. He's worked on that. He does Notre Dame football. I mentioned in the Olympics, track and field, and figure skating, and I bring all this together. When you prepare for these sports, is there anything that's similar, a thread that runs between them to get ready for horse racing coverage, which does not happen on a regular basis? It's a limited run on any of the networks, and especially when you just have three big events like the Triple Crown.
You know, Kenny, they're all very different. I think the only thing, that all of us at NBC work on sort of share as a common thread is preparation. Mm-hmm. You prepare for every event the same way, although horse racing, as I'm looking at the Derby on a 5-foot by 7-foot whiteboard in my office, it's a massive, massive challenge because every 45 minutes or so you have a live sporting event with animals. Anything can happen in those races, and then you go back to, a feature segment, a cooking segment, a handicapping segment, and then all of a sudden there's a race, and there's nothing like it. The Football Night in America, the show I work on each Sunday in the fall, is a very formatted show and a very structured show. There are very few things that can take you out of your format other than Mike McCarthy getting fired at 7:01 as we come on the air.
Right.
In a horse race, in a horse racing telecast, there are just so many variables that come into play that make it so unique and distinct from any other sport I'm a part of.
And the expanse of Churchill Downs, when people have asked me, that haven't been there. And that's what I love. One of the things with the NBC broadcast is to show the football fields that could fit inside Churchill Downs. And I like the way that you have us all the announcers line up and basically guide them from the barn area to the paddock to the starting gate. That's a lot of ground to cover. That's a lot of camera action going on out there, Rob.
Well, yeah, Kenny, our director, Jaresikov, has more than 50 cameras in place at the Kentucky Derby. And, it's unlike a football game. The other sport that Drew covers, Sunday Night Football, that's a 100-yard football field, and it's not moving. It's not changing. You know where the action's going to be. Churchill Downs, I think it's 153 acres. And, every inch of it is somehow showcased, from the barn area where I usually put you with a favorite to Millionaire's Row to the red carpet where the celebs walk, to the paddock, to the jocks room. We've got every inch covered, and it requires a massive technical effort.
And as far as going on now into the Belmont, that's another big place. It's a little more intimate. I always like the Derby to some, gala event, some great dinner party, almost like a black tie. And then you've got the barbecue backyard atmosphere of the Preakness because of the intimacy, the way Pimlico. But then you go back to a place where I believe you could put the grandstand on its end, and it's taller than the Empire State Building.
I was there today, Kenny. It is big. Big Sandy is big. And, the difference, though, when you get to Belmont from a television perspective is that you don't have to worry about all of the, I'm going to call them visual distractions in the infield like you would at Pimlico or at Churchill Downs. The infield is relatively pristine, although there is a new cell phone tower in the middle of Belmont, which is new this year. And so the obstructions for camera angles are not sort of brought into play at the Belmont, but it is massive. It can make 55 or 60,000 people look like an empty venue, which is sad to say.
Yeah, it really is. That's how big it is. And you think about it in its heyday, racing. People are always asking, Rob, after the Triple Crown, did racing take off again? I'm not sure that racing needs to take off. I think it's settled in. It's got an audience that's going to be consistent. People like to go gamble, and then it's going to have the audience that comes in every year as they do for the Triple Crown races, particularly the Derby. I don't think that they should always compare it. Will it become like the NFL? It's never going to be like the NFL or even NASCAR and things. But from my standpoint as a Kentuckian and cover the sport a lot, maybe it's not a bad thing just to have good racing and excitement and some controversy every now and then and keep it interesting.
Yeah, 100% with you. I think the Triple Crown audience specifically is an event-driven audience, much like the Super Bowl is, or the World Series or the Olympic Games. People tune in to watch the spectacle of the Kentucky Derby, the party of the Preakness, and the challenge of the Belmont and the mile-and-a-half test. Would I love to do a better job of having new eyeballs, younger eyeballs tune in? Because what I really want to get across some point, Kenny, and I'm working really hard with our partners, specifically with the Breeders' Cup and the Breeders' Cup Challenge, we really want to just let people know if you have a day to get out to a racetrack, there are not many better days you can have. If you bring a group of friends out, it's a great experience. And I really want to do a better job of getting that message across and hopefully bringing some new viewers. We're going to always have the people tune in once a year for those big events. But, I'd love to carry that momentum to the summer series in the fall, because we do have great racing, and a day at a racetrack is a heck of a lot of fun.
Talking with Rob Hyland, who's extraordinary producer for NBC Sports. We've worked together for, 20 years, Rob. It's flown by, so I guess that's good. We haven't had an ill word, at least, and the show's not over right now, but so far so good.
Kenny, you are the best. And you and I have everything from bull riding to horse racing and everything in between. So
that used to be my joke. I did bull riding, boxing, MMA, and horse racing, all the animal sports. I've covered them all. But getting back to like the Derby, what I've always really respected about you and liked about you. And I thought of my late mother, Edith, when you mentioned your mother, Ann, about explaining things, because you're getting an audience that does not watch horse racing. And for some of these people, they're watching the Kentucky Derby. If it's an exciting Derby, and maybe with the controversy this year, it continues on and they'll watch Preakness, maybe even on the Belmont. But the whole point of that is, you need to introduce the people to what's going on with these people that bring the horses to the track, be it the jockey, the owner, the breeder, whatever. And I really like the emphasis you put on that, because in my opinion, down the road, for horse racing to grow, if it can grow in increments at all, it's got to be more than just about betting to start with. You got to have some compassion and sympathy and empathy and all that involved.
It's interesting. I had this conversation with Tim Layden, Sports Illustrated's Tim Layden, who contributes on some of our bigger events like the Kentucky Derby and the Triple Crown. And in my opinion, I know he agrees, and he'll say it much more eloquently than I will. There are no better characters than in the sport of horse racing. And every horse in the Kentucky Derby has a trainer that has a story, a jockey that has a story, an ownership group that has a story, and a barn full of the people that make that horse each day get to the track and, get home safely. And, there are just so many layers to each equine athlete that, to me, that should always be the number one focus on the bigger races we cover, the broader and the more casual audience. Let's tell great stories. And, as long as we get the racing right and deal with the wagering, that will be part of the show. But to me, the stories of horse racing are what really captivate a broad audience. And I know, from time to time, I jump on, the Blood Horse message boards and the DRF message boards. And, there are a lot of people that hate our coverage because it's dumbed down to some degree. And we know that the people that are reading Blood Horse and DRF, they're going to watch the Derby no matter what. So we're trying to find new fans and new people that will really fall in love with a sport or a story and find a reason for them to stick around longer if they know that Mark Cassie and his son Norm have a horse together in the Derby, and that they've got a really unique relationship, and that Mark grew up in a house right across the street from Churchill Downs.
Right.
I'd much rather spend 4 or 5 minutes telling that story than 4 or 5 minutes on speed figures.
And Rob, something I've found out too, I've got a cousin that does this. He's a pretty good handicapper, by the way. He's online all the time, or he's at OTB. Yep. And he'll say, I heard about the car. I said, what do you mean you heard about it? You don't even watch? And there's a lot of these guys that are reading the Blood Horse and the Daily Racing Form. They're at OTB and they hear something about, NBC's coverage. They didn't get in. They didn't say he ran in 58-2. They didn't explain anything correctly. And I like every now and then a guy will come up to me and say something like that. I said, "Did you watch? How much did you watch of the show?" Well, I was at it off track out at Keeneland, or I was at off track, out in Remington Park, and no. So that's what I always love about some of these horse. I say, if all these fans were horse racing fans, horse racing would be on 45 times a year because you'd have an audience of like 5, 6, 8 million anytime it's on.
Yep, you're right.
See, there's my statement.
Listen, I don't discount the fact that it is a sport that deserves, incredible respect and analysis, and we try to do that as well. But we try to kind of take a multiple slice approach. We give you a slice of everything. Jerry and Randy will sort of digest the X's and O's for you. You will tell the best stories of the day and deal with some interviews. Mike Tirico will set the stage for what is the race what we're actually covering and why it matters. Edzo will handicap the race. Donna will give us every incredible report on horseback and the post-race interviews. Lafitte Pinkai will be in the jocks room, covering all the stories that take place there. And then, Nick Luck is the newest member of our Triple Crown team. He's got a little bit of everything to do, but we try to give you something as a viewer for everyone. That's sort of the goal of these shows, these bigger shows. Is
a little bit like it from your standpoint, talking with Rob Hyland, NBC Sports, because you do, in my opinion, the two highest profiled Olympic events, track and field in the summer, and then figure skating for the Winter Olympics. and the stories you have to tell there, because those are two sports that people don't follow on a weekly basis, probably, like they're keeping up with NFL teams even in the middle of the summer.
100% right. They are the two biggest Olympic venues. I'd put swimming and gymnastics up there in the summer games, but definitely figure skating is sort of the flagship of our winter Olympics coverage. And you're getting a 1 rating if that, for your average figure skating show in the fall leading up to the Olympics, and you get to the Olympics. You're doing a double-digit rating with more than 20 million people watching. So, you got to tell the audience what they need to know. But you mentioned my mom earlier. I told Tara Lipinski and Johnny Wheeler, you need to know about Ann Hyland. Ann Hyland doesn't know what a triple Lutz is or a sow cow, and I need you to make sure you broadcast and not narrowcast. You guys cover figure skating all year long. But you need to make sure you invite and engage a brand new audience. And it's the same with Otto Bolden at track and field. He's also a coach and coaches a lot of athletes. We'll do a 1 rating for the Prefontaine Classic, which is a track meet that takes place in the early summer. And you get the Olympics and the same sort of numbers as figure skating. And again, I encourage Otto to really not speak down to, but to always put a comma on an expression, a phrase, a term, and then define what that term was and why it matters. So, very similar to horse racing. When Donna Brothers is talking about a sealed track, what does that mean? When an interview subject throws out a fraction time for the quarter mile and half mile, have the reporter, like Nick Luck did at the Derby, explain whether that's too fast or slow, just to make sure the audience understands the sport. And it also makes them feel a little bit more invested if they understand and are not being spoken over.
And Rob has been a part of the telecasts of 2 Triple Crown champs, a controversial losing Triple Crown with Steve Coburn, with California Chrome, what happened this year at the Derby. I mean, my friend, this has been a pretty interesting 5 years of horse racing coverage. Not to say the others haven't been, but it's really interesting.
It's been a crazy stretch. Let's not forget. Let's go back to my first Triple Crown experience with I'll Have Another scratching the day before the Belmont. Yeah. We had to rip up the entire format and start from scratch after we got off the air on Friday night for a show on Saturday. So, every year horse racing, which I love, I truly love it. It's brought me the greatest joys in my life. My 2 little girls are sort of a product of covering a horse race. But every year there just seems to be something that, will test, your chops as a producer, and you better be ready to react and turn in any direction.
Well, you do that so well. And, and I think that all of us that are on your announcing crew, we know that you have confidence in us. So believe me, that helps a whole lot when you're out there running around and, we're not going to get in your ear to say, hey, Rob, we'd like to be on FaceTime. We'd like to, could you give me one more hit so I can wave to the family? We're not going to do that. And, that helps a whole lot, too. I mean, it's a great communication.
I feel so lucky to be a part of this team. We had a nice dinner in Baltimore last week with most of the on-air reporters and announcers. And it is such a great group of people. And everyone on that team, it makes the show better. And, I'm the one that feels lucky. I get to sort of guide you guys, but, I'm really taking your lead a lot of the time, and you guys are what make the show so successful.
If I send you a story idea, I think you should go with it for the Belmont, okay?
You got it.
Here's what it is, because I would love to interview Ann Hyland one time.
I think that's a good idea. I'll have to get Ann to the Belmont.
I mean, honestly, you use your mom, and I understand that because, my folks, I didn't grow up in this racing world. I mean, when I started doing local TV in Kentucky, that's how I got into it years ago. But for many of my friends are football, basketball, baseball guys, boxing, that's their world. And so I kind of think about them sometimes when I'm telling a story, and I always think about what you say with your mom. Let's explain it a little bit, because we could throw out all kinds of fractions and go back to speed figures, and to them, it's a foreign language.
Correct.
So what now?
Broadcast, Kenny, not narrowcast.
That's right. So, okay. So are you surprised it's really been a good flow. Honestly, after the Derby, I wasn't sure how things were going to shape up for the Preakness with setting up the coverage. And I think that War of Wills going on to the Belmont is a great storyline to continue, among other things.
It's a great storyline. And he's a deserving champ. If he can do it again at the Belmont, I think, the 3-year-old horse of the year will definitely be something that everyone's watching throughout the summer and fall. And, listen, the Preakness, I was impressed by even the numbers that we did. We had more viewers watching the Preakness without a Derby winner or a Derby runner-up. In fact, what is it? The top 4 finishers won in the Derby.
51. I think
it did a higher rating than the PGA Championship. So
wow.
It was the highest sporting event, afternoon sporting event of the weekend, and sort of the power of these big events that we have in the spring between the Derby, Preakness, and Belmont. I'm so looking forward to seeing what War of Will can do again, and I'm also looking forward to seeing Master Fencer, the horse from Japan, come back. He ran an incredible Derby. If you go back and watch his race, I think he finished 7th or something around there. He came flying at the end, and I'd love to see that horse again. And I can tell you without a doubt we'll have every storyline covered with you leading the way each lap around when we do those whips.
Well, thank you, and I'm looking forward to. I thought of Master Fencer. I thought of Lonnie. Remember, Lonnie was kind of he was kind of the wacky horse for some reasons. For the family audience, it's enough said. But for the Derby,
he was a little frisky.
He was a little frisky, exactly. He could have been Randy was his nickname, and so from the Derby and the Preakness, but then he ran a heck of a Belmont.
He sure did.
He stayed all the way. So I think the Japanese horses down the road. They seem to be better than the European horses at this stage along the Triple Crown Road from Master. Maybe that could be a case.
Yeah, I think you're right. And we're going to have a great Met Mile earlier in the day. We're really excited about our summer series as well. I just met with our partners at Naira, and we're going to be televising a turf Triple Crown this summer, and it starts Fall Stars weekend in July, and there's a race up at Saratoga and another one back in the fall at Belmont when we get back to Belmont. So, a lot of great racing coming up on NBC and NBCSN that I'm really excited to be a part of.
Well, I cannot thank you enough for being on this show, Rob.
Thanks for having me, Kenny. I do listen to it every week, so I'm looking forward to listening to the first half of this before I jump in.
I tell you, everybody was telling me how pressure it is. They said, "You're going to interview Rob?" I said, "Yes." I go, "Don't feel any pressure." It's good to have friends like Eddie Olczyk, isn't it? And people like that telling me how much pressure I have. I said, "Well, I had you guys on. I didn't feel any pressure." They said, "Yeah, but we're not in charge." I said, "That's a good point."
Like I said, you're a great teammate.
Rob, thanks for being on. Multiple Emmy Award winner. He's probably won 2 or 3 Emmys in the last 20 minutes we've done this show. And I look forward to seeing you in Belmont, my friend. Man. Thanks, Rob. Rob Hyland, NBC Sports here on the Horse Racing Show. We'll be back with more right after this.